It's the Blood Red Podcast, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo. I'm Guy Clarke. Welcome along. The new season starts here. Liverpool back in pre-season training, gearing up for the campaign ahead. We'll be discussing what Fabio Carvalho can bring to Jurgen Klopp's side, what else can be expected in this summer's transfer window, plus how the Reds' rivals are shaping up for the season to come. To do all of that, we have our Liverpool correspondent, both home and away, Paul Gorst, Theo, Squires, and creeping in at the back post is David Lynch. Chaps, I trust you're all well. And, well, Gorsty, we're into July. Is it right that I'm saying the new season is with us?
Well, it is, isn't it? Yeah, this is day one of when it all begins. The summer schedule. The friendlies are kicking off, and then before we know it, it'll be the August the 6th, is it, for the Fulham game, the first game of the new season. Is there a game on the Friday night? I'm not sure, but Liverpool obviously kicking things off of Fulham on the Saturday afternoon, so it'll be here before you know it. I still feel as though we're in the kind of post-season lull in terms. It feels like the Champions League final was only about a week ago, and it doesn't seem that long ago that me and Theo were travelling the length and breadth of the country, from Wembley to Southampton to Villa Park to back to Anfield and then to Paris. And it's just been a bit of a whirlwind final couple of months, hasn't it? Certainly from the beginning of April. But here we are now, looking, that's all in the rearview mirror. We're looking ahead. Day one of pre-season. It's the day that the players dread and the one that Klopp loves and his staff. Certainly Andreas Kormaier seems to enjoy more than any other. So, yeah, I think now you can say it is officially next season. So now it's this season. And I think Liverpool are going to be delighted, actually, that the fact that they've got almost a full complement of players for the full pre-season schedule. We know how much, owners Klopp puts on it in terms of, there's normally a summer tournament where he can't get his big guns in there from day one or something holding them back. But this season isn't the case. So I think he'll be delighted, to be fair, to be able to get on the training ground and work on one or two things. And I think we will see Liverpool fly out of the traps as a result of that.
Yeah, today, am I right? Is today, Dave, the day of the lactate test? I always thought that was downing as many milkshakes or something as you could. But James Milner's the man for that, isn't he?
Yeah, he'll be one of the rare ones who's looking forward to it. I think it tends to be him and Mo Salah who do the best in that every summer. And I think with Milner, it's sort of a point of personal pride, isn't it? He's sort of the standards he sets himself. I think that's a really good way of laying down the marker. It is, the first day of the season starting almost as you get into pre-season at the age of whatever he is, 36 now. Come in and sort of beat your mates at a lactate test, which takes some doing. I've watched those up close, and you realise very quickly how sort of brutal that is. That those whistle noises are getting closer and closer each time you do round the track, and it really is brutal. I wouldn't fancy having to go myself, to be honest. I don't think I'd get anywhere near that. It's and I think but all the players know the value of it now. We're at the point now in Jurgen Klopp's reign where all the trophies that have been won, all the successful seasons, all the points that have been gained, I think they all know that there's a value to making yourself feel sick in pre-season and starting off in a good way, in a positive way, by absolutely beasting yourself, as they call it. So it's probably not something that players are looking forward to, but they absolutely know the value of getting in there and giving it everything.
Yeah, I'm glad we don't have to do a pre-season pod bleep test because I know I'd be finishing absolutely last if we were to do that. But Theo, as Gorsty said, this season's pre-season schedule, obviously going out to Thailand next week, but pretty much, well, once they're out there, we'll have the full complement of players with them. And it is going to be so key, isn't it? And I suppose we're only going to see the benefit of what's already been done this summer come the start of August when this squad's had a full month together to prepare.
Yeah, it's something they've not really been able to enjoy much under Klopp. You always seem to have international tournaments, and the one year they didn't, it was the pandemic and players coming back late. It's always like you're playing catch up, and like you and I, we've both done the club side of things, and when you interview those players, they always say how important pre-season is and having that day one, so you're settled. Like footballers, they love that stability to be in the door from day one, be with the teammates, and they can just have that head start. And it's one where I know fans might have a little grumble saying, well, Liverpool's business is all done. Why aren't they signing a midfielder? They'll look on enviously at Man City as they sign Kalvin Phillips, Haaland, Chelsea if they get Sterling, and all this for the big six clubs. But Liverpool were done. Most of the squad are there today. The ones that aren't will be there this time next week. in Thailand for this Middle East tour. Liverpool have had that head start on the opposition here, and you trust them to make it count. We know how hard they work in pre-season. It is making them work to that level, almost beyond what they need in the season, so they can actually just keep on going throughout the campaign. Early on in Klopp's reign, there was maybe a bit of criticism from certain outsiders saying that he's working him too hard and that's where the injuries come from. Well, they've seen how much it's paid off for them. The fact they work them so hard, and it's the reason they can go for a quadruple and have all that rotation and all the players pretty much fresh right until the end of the season. And you've got 3 new signings there, get to bed in from pretty much day one. Nunes has to wait a little bit longer, but it's not as though he's coming in, end of July, and then you've got the season starting in a week's time. You're thinking back to after they won the Champions League, Sadio Mane was on the bench for the first game of the season because he'd come back so late after international duty. It is a blessing for Liverpool. It's something they've not been able to enjoy too often before. And you just know Jurgen Klopp will be rubbing his hands together in glee. The fact that he can have his whole squad there, he can get them all on the same page, make sure they're all at the same fitness levels early on, and then just as Gorst said, be ready to go early on in the season. It's going to be another long haul. We know it's a strange campaign with the World Cup in the middle of it, but it is a head start for Liverpool when they're taking on these early challenges. We know they're going to be playing twice a week again, pretty much every week for this first half of the season. This is when they make it count.
So, Gorsty, just in terms of the logistics of it, not every player's back right now, are they? There's 11 of the big hitters who were away on international duty who are reporting. What, at the back end of this week? Is it before they fly out to Thailand?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
How does the rest of the pre-season schedule then look? Because it's obviously Thailand. What is it? Is it Evian are they going to, or how exactly is it looking?
So they're flying to Thailand possibly Saturday, Saturday or Sunday. So they're off to Thailand, and then obviously Singapore for Crystal Palace, and then it's they got a couple of games against the Red Bull teams, haven't they? So they're playing Leipzig and Salzburg, one in Leipzig and the other one in Salzburg, both in the creatively named Red Bull arenas. And yeah, I think, it does. Austria is going to be the camp. We know the Klopp has taken them there last couple of years. Certainly last year they were there for the best part of a month, weren't they, before he went to Evian for a week. I think it was 3 weeks in Seffelden, is it? Which is near Salzburg, and then to Evian for a week. And of course, they've got the Community Shield, haven't they, which will be in the King Power this year. It's on the 30th of July, is it? The Saturday. 1 second. Yeah, it's on the 30th, and then they play Strasbourg the following night at Anfield in the only home friendly. And that's kind of a tactic we've seen Liverpool do in recent years, certainly under Klopp, in terms of playing back-to-back friendlies. We've seen it in 2016 when they played Barcelona at Wembley and then Mainz in Germany. And then obviously last year they had the 2 Anfield friendlies, didn't they? Osasuna and then Athletic, or the other way around. I can't quite remember now. But certainly Klopp tries to use this period as much as he can to get them as fit and ready as they can, because, him more than probably most managers put so much stock in his players being absolutely as fit as they can be. And he knows it's going to be a long old season again. And, last season they had to be absolutely peak conditions, didn't he, given that they went and played 63 games. Don't envision that happening again, but certainly Liverpool will be looking to play somewhere, north of 50 games. So, it's just a case of using these next 3-4 weeks to, drill down into the specifics of it all and get everyone as fit as they can be. And as I say, I do think the fact that there's no summer tournaments for any international teams at the moment, that will be massive for Liverpool.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm right in saying, Dave, 5 of the 6 opening day season games that Jurgen Klopp's had, Liverpool have started with wins. Preparation has been so crucial to the success that he's brought to Liverpool. You think back to the title-winning season, just how impeccably Liverpool started that campaign, reeling off, 19 out of 20 wins, and just how they continued to go through those kind of motions. And a lot of that groundwork is led in pre-season.
Yeah, 100%. You can't afford to have a slow start these days. If you've got to win the Premier League title with 90+ points, you really have to win, big chunky opening games. It's not like in the 90s where you could make a slow start and come from nowhere in the second half of the season to win the title. You know that if you have a stumble in the start of the season, you lose a couple of games, you look a bit off it, the Manchester City will be off into the distance, and they can tend to open up a points gap that then is sort of in the sale, but you can't catch up with them. I thought Liverpool actually did that, as you mentioned, in the title winning season. They got 9 points ahead of City, didn't they, by beating them? And that really, I think City at that point sort of gave up on the title almost, because they knew that lead, they were never going to catch that up. So that just shows you really how important it is to be on it from the start. And I think, although results in pre-season definitely don't matter, and we have seen some odd results in pre-season under Jurgen Klopp, the thing you'll be most keen to see is sharpness and people linking up well, and sort of bits of flickers of football really that he'll want to see that shows that his team is getting towards the best. And that might not always present itself in friendly wins, but it will. He will know on the training ground what condition they're in, what the players are looking like, and whether they're ready to start the new season. And as I say, it's absolutely vital to get off to a good start. So this period is crucial.
Let's get into the players who are there then, Theo, and one in particular was officially confirmed as a Liverpool player on Sunday. That, of course, Fabio Carvalho. What are you expecting from him? And I suppose, how excited over this signing are you? He might not be a household name across European football right now, but there is still plenty of intrigue as to what he could deliver.
Yeah, there is. Like every report you hear of him, it's someone singing his praises, from Harvey Elliott to the coaching team. He had a really good year in the Championship last year. Granted, it was as a number 10 in this Fulham team that stormed to the title when you had Mitrovic basically scoring in every single game. But he had a really good campaign as that number 10. I think he got 11 goals in all competitions. He scored against Man City in the FA Cup. And it's one where you think, if that's his starting point, what can he do for Liverpool? It's almost like when Harvey Elliott came back from that loan at Blackburn, you think, yeah, it's the Championship. But when it's a player so young making that impact, it's like in the Championship, if you're getting double figures, goals, assists around that mark, you're ready for that step up to the Premier League. You're going to make that impact. And you think, what can he learn from these elite players now? It's an exciting one. And that's intrigue as well with him, because you don't really know what position they're going to want him to play. Like, he's been signed as part of this attacking revamp, along with Núñez and Diaz to replace Mane, Origi and Minamino. But it's like you can't really see him playing out wide because he's not played there before. Like, they might see a winger in there and completely reinvent him. Klopp's done that before when he put Elliott into centre mid last pre-season. But he's played up front. He's played as this number 10. He's played as a number 8. There's a lot of versatility there, and he's young. So you think he could be adapted to any of these roles. He's like strengthening the midfield and the attack in one. When you got 5 substitutions across the board this year, you're certainly going to see more of him than we've seen like Origi and Minamino in the past. You expected him to pick up the slack there and be like a forward for them in the cup games. So he's going to get minutes, and it's just how quickly can he make an impact. He's certainly a signing for the future. He's going to count as homegrown, so he's ticking that box as well. You can see there's a lot of promise in this one player, and while he's not going to be like having the mighty price tag of 85 million Darwin Núñez, and you wouldn't expect him to see him starting in that first 11 against Fulham on the opening day, he's still someone to keep an eye on over the season. And Fulham, they've got a good academy. Like, it's not just Elliott who's come through there. I think Ryan Sessegnon, they usually know what to do with these younger players to get the best out of them. Liverpool trust them, as we saw with how well Nico Williams did on loan there last year. You trust that Liverpool signed another good player in Carvalho, and he's waiting to see what he can do when he's working with a manager like Klopp.
I just wanted to say actually on that, with Fabio Carvalho, what's an interesting thing about him as a signing, and Darwin Núñez actually fits into this, is do we see in this pre-season now, do Liverpool go to 4-2-3-1? Because we've speculated about it a lot, that shape would suit a couple of those new signings, would probably suit the way the squad is laid out in terms of not adding that first choice central midfielder this summer. It'll be really interesting to see if in the friendlies where the Klopp sort of tries that out, because I think there's no way he's going to go into the first game of the Premier League season playing that formation without us seeing it in pre-season. And I think for the likes of Carvalho and also maybe Harvey Elliott, 4-2-3-1 really sort of suits them operating in those pockets. They could operate probably in any of those 3 positions really across that, just behind a front man. And if you've got a target man like Núñez, that'll really fit as well. So it'd be really interesting to see in pre-season whether we see a bit of that and where those young players fit into it.
It seems to be, Gorst, a very deliberate Liverpool, and have all the hallmarks of kind of this next Liverpool phase of he's young, he ticks as homegrown, but equally even before arriving at Liverpool, has understandings and relationships with whether it's existing Liverpool players such as Harvey Elliott or even Nico Williams, or an understanding of how Liverpool go about things. I'm sure during the last few months, once it became apparent he was going to be coming to Liverpool, I'm sure he would have been speaking to Harry Wilson at Fulham an awful lot as well. And Liverpool are very smart in how they piece together their moves in the transfer window, not just the economics of how they get the deals done, but who and how they target these players as well.
Yeah, I mean, Liverpool are always kind of looking to get ahead of the curve, aren't they? They don't necessarily bring in players who the absolute finished article, and the, you know, those types of players come with those types of fees. So Núñez, to an extent as well, fits into this in terms of you're looking ahead. Carvalho signs a 5-year deal at the age of 19. Núñez signs one when he's just turned 23. Liverpool's certainly looking to the long term, aren't they, with the team that they're building. And even when you can go back to like Kay Gordon and the players who they're signing now in the academy ranks, they're always thinking about the future, aren't they? And whether they can save themselves, not necessarily money and fees, because that is obviously part of it, but saving themselves, you know, getting into bidding wars and the hype of speculation and battles that come along with trying to buy players who your rivals are also looking to go for. So when they sign players like Fabio Carvalho and to an extent Núñez, even though he's come with a pretty big fee, it's always because they're looking to what's going to be down the line. You know, Jurgen Klopp's just signed a new contract there until 2026. So, you know, what's his next Liverpool team going to look like? Can it be greater than the one that's come before, the one that won the Premier League in 2020 and the Champions League in 2019? And I think, you know, Liverpool are always looking to future-proof, and Fabio Carvalho stands out as a kind of massive example of that, as does Harvey Elliott 3 years ago. You know, we came in being the youngest player that had ever played in the Premier League, and this season now, you know, would have been last season, but sadly he got injured. This coming season, we're about to start realising, you know, the potential that Liverpool feel that he had when they signed him years ago. So, yeah, I think Carvalho was an interesting one, really, because there's going to be no external pressure on him to instantly deliver. It's just going to be a little bit of a feeling out process and adapting to the club and the surroundings, and then seeing where he's best suited. Is he number 8? Is he number 10? Can he play out wide? Whereas with Núñez, there's a bit more pressure on him to instantly deliver and kind of fill that void left by Mane. But yeah, I think Carvalho could be a little bit of a surprise hit this coming season. He'll certainly play a lot more than perhaps many outsiders are expecting anyway.
Yeah, I'm completely on board with what you said there. I'm very excited to see what he can do. And Dave, he's a player who's played number 10. He's got a surname begins with C. The comparisons to a certain Felipe Coutinho have already been drawn, and I'm sure they are only going to increase. And whilst, yes, he is still a teenager, he is now at Liverpool Football Club. He is a first-team listed player. There will be expectation of what he can do and what he can achieve. And I just wonder how much can be expected of him for this coming season, because whilst he, yes, is making the step up from the Championship, he's coming from a side that scored the most ever goals a Championship side had ever scored. Yes, they had a talisman like Aleksandar Mitrovic at the top end of the pitch, but it feels comparable in terms of probably what he's going to be asked to do for Liverpool of what he did for Fulham. And when you take the example of, say, someone like Mason Mount, who stepped up from Derby into Chelsea, albeit they had a transfer ban, it does look as though there is maybe an ability, as Gorsty said, for him to surprise a good few people outside of Liverpool.
Yeah, I'd agree with that 100%. I think, you know, we saw with Harvey Elliott last season, it's a season prior, he'd had a loan, hadn't he, in the Championship and done really well. And then, you know, all of a sudden he came into Liverpool and he was straight in the first team at the start of the season, right up until the point at which he got that horrendous injury. So, you know, Jurgen Klopp's not scared of throwing these players in. But, you know, alongside that, while he will get the chances and he'll be in a really high-functioning team that should give him opportunities to score goals and create, there's also no real pressure on him, because I think the fee that he comes in for is so low, so nominal that, you know, there's no expectation around that. And as Gorsty says, he's almost going under the radar a little bit because he's a young player and he doesn't have to come in and be a success either. You know, Liverpool aren't reliant on him coming in and scoring goals. I think there's probably more of that pressure is on Núñez at the moment, and obviously Salah will pick up the rest of that, and all the other forward options like Jota. You know, those options are there. So it's not that they need Carvalho to come in and hit the ground running and be this absolute superstar from the off, but if he can do it and the capability to do so is there, then he's got the framework to do it within. So it's a perfect situation, really. No real pressure on him, but also, the ability to succeed at Liverpool is there because, we've seen how much talent he has. I like those comparisons with Coutinho in terms of some of the goals we've seen him score. And I think, Jurgen Klopp has shown that you can use a player like that really cleverly before. So I think everything's there for him to be a success.
Yeah, definitely. Theo, what's your thoughts on Carvalho, but also kind of perhaps that move back towards a 4-2-3-1?
I don't think it needs to be one where it's a new formation altogether and that is your first choice. I think it helps that Liverpool have these versatile players so they can switch from one system to the other and just base it depending on who they're playing, what they need in certain matches. It makes them unpredictable. I think Klopp said when they sold Coutinho that made them more unpredictable, and it makes them more unpredictable again. You need to have that variety of attacking options that can play in a number of systems that make you be able to turn a game just by making one substitution and change the system here. We've seen in the past where he's put on a fourth attacker and it's worked for Liverpool. And then we've seen these the finals last year or the games against the big four sides where they could have done with another goal and it just didn't fall for them. It didn't happen. It's like, well, this is what they've brought in to try and counter that. So they have got this extra platform to go and get points off teams, to get goals past teams. And it's beneficial as well because you think, well, moving forward, you assume Salah stays on the right-hand side, but he could, on all intents and purposes, do this Ronaldo thing of going central as he gets older. Maybe he loses a yard of pace, and that will suit him. Just have him in the penalty area and have players working around them. You need that versatility. You need that variety of systems. Man City, they just seem to be able to sign, they have 6 attacking players on the pitch. They just have one holding midfielder and then just work around that. When they've got Cancelo getting forward and linking up, it doesn't really matter on the specific formation. You've just got attacking players. So it definitely aids Liverpool to have that flexibility to break down teams.
Yeah, most definitely. Right, we spoke about in terms of player already who's come through the door. Gorsty, what about what's left for the summer then? Because we've got best part of 2 months of August in terms of incomings. I know you're expecting probably to have your feet up, but still plenty could happen for Liverpool.
Yeah, it could. I mean, we're often we get quoted on social media by these fan sites with big followings that what we say is definitive, and we like to think that we're clued up when we speak to people and we know what's going on. But ultimately, Liverpool make decisive moves very quickly nowadays. They didn't have any intention of signing Luis Diaz in the final week of the January transfer window, and before the Sunday, or rather on the Sunday, the Monday before it's closed, they're unveiling him as a £37 million footballer that could rise to 50 million. They didn't expect to lose Sadio Mane. He wanted to speak with his agent about a new transfer, a new contract, and 2 weeks later, they're unveiling Darwin Núñez as a £64 million striker that could rise to 85. Mohamed Salah's contract, they flew out to Mykonos last week and wrapped that up in a couple of days, and now he's signed on until 2025. So these things happen very quickly. So when you hear things that Liverpool are done for the summer, that's generally where the lay of the land is now. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's definitive and that is the cut-off point and they are done and dusted and absolutely nothing is going to change the mind. There could be 1 or 2 things that arise where something sensational presents itself and they feel that they can't miss out on it this summer and they move into the market. Or they could have a scenario where 2 or 3 players in a similar position either get injured or make it known that they want to move. So, when you're speaking to people and you're hearing things that they're saying that they're probably done, then you're inclined to believe it. But that self-imposed deadline can easily be ripped up and they can dive into the market at any given moment. So we're not expecting anything major, but there's still the best part of 2 months left for the window to surprise us all. So we'll see, and we'll obviously bring it all as and when we get it.
Yeah, never say never, I suppose, is the moral of that story. Dave, I suppose it falls back into what we were saying about pre-season before of Liverpool. I suppose, as Gorsty says, it's a self-imposed kind of, doesn't look like we need to bring anyone in. And that's because the preparation, the groundwork has been put in of making sure that everyone is there before pre-season gets underway. So Liverpool aren't rushing around. And actually, I suppose within that, it only strengthens their negotiation hand, because if they do see something that presents itself, they're not desperate to bring a player in.
Yeah, I think Jurgen Klopp sort of said before, hasn't he, that he likes to have all his players there from the start of pre-season to really know with what he's working with. And I think that sort of feeds into, as Ghosty says, that it's easy to believe when they say that they're probably done, because, you know, they tend to have all this stuff lined up, all the plans are ready to go. But equally, as he mentions, it's, you know, it doesn't rule out completely that something can change. You know, there are things that go wrong with his squad in terms of injuries, or someone unexpected sort of pushing for a move that they didn't think was going to come up, and things like that. But I think, you know, Liverpool at the moment will look at their squad and I think know that pretty much for what they want to do this season, they've got every option that they need, and things will maybe change going into next season, and that's when they want to go for the big midfielder. That's the ideal circumstance for them, is that only comes along next summer. But for now, they're happy with what they've got, and I think, to be honest, you know, you can look at what they've got options wise everywhere, and I know midfield is the massive debate, but I think numbers wise, you can't really argue that they're short there. I just don't think that's the case. I think, you know, they really have got a lot of options there. Whether people think they're the right quality or not is probably up for debate, and we all know that's why they do want to add to that position further down the line. But I think you can't be unhappy in terms of the numbers and bodies they've got in for the rest of the season. I don't think they're going to get caught short by injury, or it would have to be a couple of major ones. You know, touch wood, that doesn't happen. But I think it'd have to be something serious to sort of rip this squad apart, because to me, on paper, it's looking extremely strong. And I think, you know, you can understand why Liverpool would think, okay, we do these bits of business and then we can go into this new season confident that we'll challenge for trophies, because I think all the options to do that are there, not least a midfield that almost won the quadruple last season.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of then exceptional opportunities that could present themselves, Theo, would the name Jude Bellingham fall into that category?
Yeah, he would. He's an exceptional player that whoever signs him, assuming in 2023, you expect him to be a linchpin for their midfield for a decade at least. He's got this potential to be a generational player, and it's just who's there at the right moment to get hold of him. I don't think Liverpool would have any issue paying the fee, like we've seen, was it 103 million reported over the weekend or the back end of last week. Liverpool have shown in the past, if it's the right player, they're happy to pay that sort of fee. The issue would maybe be the wages, and then it just depends on the sort of clubs that are in for him, what they're willing to offer. But then Liverpool have got around that in the past by just making sure they hold talks. They make it really personal. They hold talks. Jurgen Klopp phones them up, and it's a case of Liverpool or nothing for them. They managed to get Darwin Núñez when United looked like they were in for him. They got Sadio Mane when he'd pretty much agreed a deal with United. Got Luis Diaz when Spurs were closing in. It's very much a case of Liverpool going hard, trying to do all this groundwork and going, you want to play for Liverpool. You might not be on that huge wage straight away, but if you deliver what our players are delivering, you will be on it soon enough. And it's not about the money for these players. Like, they're going to earn insane amounts regardless. It's about the ability to win the trophies. And that's what they've built at Liverpool. And it's just what happens with Bellingham. Like, if he's the one they want in midfield, it makes sense to wait, because you know he's this exceptional talent. As Lynch has said, Liverpool have got the numbers in midfield that will get them by for another season. And it's, what does he want to do? You can understand why Dortmund don't want to sell now. They've just lost Haaland. There's no release clause, so there's no pressure there with Bellingham. And there's a World Cup, so his value is only going to rise further. But then with Bellingham as well, he's still a teenager, isn't he? Do him no harm to have another year in the Bundesliga and then weigh up his options after the World Cup. Like since Sancho, as good as he looked in Germany, he had a difficult first season in England with United, and he went to United on these insane 350 plus whatever wages. Liverpool don't do things like that, reaping the benefits from it, from having this strategy in place. If it is a case of Bellingham goes to whoever pays him the most, Liverpool won't be too upset about it. They'll just go to their list of targets and choose someone else they think can do the job. We know they'd have gone for a midfielder this summer if they were confident they could get Tchouaméni. He wanted to go to Real Madrid. Liverpool got a very shrewd way of doing their business behind the scenes. We know that Bellingham's of interest, but he won't be the only name on that shortlist. And this shortlist would have been drawn up probably a year ago. And it's one where I don't think it's just one midfielder they need either. It is this gradual transition with the team, soft launching this next generation. Like we've seen them bring in 3 forwards in 2022, where they're like Firmino leaves and they need a replacement for him next year. That's a continued transition. Midfield, you've got Henderson, Thiago, the wrong side of 30, as well as Milner. Oxlade-Chamberlain could go. While Bellingham, if they got him, he would be this marquee signing. You'd expect another couple of new faces in midfield as well to complement what they've already got with the likes of Fabinho, Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, and then the likes of Henderson and Thiago as they're getting on into their twilight years.
I appreciate you've learned to pronounce Aurelien Tchouameni's name.
Yeah, I've done that just for you, guys.
Yeah, after he's now not on Liverpool's radar. So well done, Theo. Good running in coming into that at that point. Gorsty, Theo did mention within that the fact that Dortmund aren't in a position where they have to sell. We said Liverpool aren't in a position where this summer they have to buy. There is a World Cup coming up that could potentially inflate Jude Bellingham's price tag further. Is there not a point at where Liverpool could look to negotiate a deal in advance of even next summer, where, as we know, these talks are fluid, they go on between clubs and representatives a lot of the time. But I suppose both Erling Haaland and Jadon Sancho, to an extent, were players who Liverpool liked the look of at one time, but eventually just inflated beyond what Liverpool could afford. Kylian Mbappe, perhaps another. Is there not a possibility where Liverpool actually strike while the iron's hot and say, look, we realise you don't want to let go of Jude Bellingham until 2023. We don't need a midfielder until 2023, but let's try and carve out some kind of deal.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I don't claim to have any insight into how Dortmund think and how they operate, but one thing I've noticed with Dortmund over the last few years is when the speculation has been linking their players with moves away, it's always been in excess of 100 million. And I remember Sancho was 100 million, 120 million. I think he went for just over 70. Haaland, you couldn't buy him. What was his fee going to be? And eventually there's a little 51 million, release clause that Manchester City hits, and off he goes to the Etihad. It seems to be that there's plenty of talk from the Dortmund camp about these astronomical fees, and history tells you that they sell players considerably less than that. So while you're reading in Bild, which is obviously the influential German publication, that 120 million euros is the starting point for Bellingham, I wonder whether that is actually the case. I'm sure that they'd come down considerably on that. The World Cup is a bit of an interesting one, though, isn't it? Just because it's kind of slapped right there in the middle of a season. I don't particularly think Bellingham is going to be a regular for England at the World Cup. Gareth Southgate seems to prefer that axis of Kalvin Phillips and Declan Rice, and it's held them in good stead throughout the Euros. And Bellingham is one of a few other options in midfield, isn't he, alongside Henderson and a couple of others. So I don't think it's going to be a case where he goes to the World Cup and completely explodes, and you're looking at it where you're thinking, well, his performances have probably priced Liverpool out of it, because as I say, I think Gareth Southgate's style of football, and we've argued this till we're blue in the face, haven't we? The likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold don't get into the team because of that risk-averse style that he seems to prefer. So, I think ultimately, Bellingham will top a very short midfield list who Liverpool have got lined up, and I can't see it being this summer where they make kind of big moves to bring someone in.
I think just on that, I think there's no real incentive for Dortmund to strike the deal now. Just because maybe there is a chance that he makes a few sub appearances at the World Cup and looks incredible, and that inflates his price tag. And also, there's no release clause there. So you think back to the Naby Keita situation, the incentive for Leipzig in that case was to they knew that the release clause was coming in the following summer, and they got a premium on top of that from Liverpool to make sure that they were the club who got him. Whereas in this case, Dortmund's ideal is that he has another great season for them. Looks really good at the World Cup, and his price tag goes up and up, and then all of a sudden there's a bidding war for him next summer. Now, if that does happen, I don't think that Liverpool would be really keen to get involved in that. I think as Theo sort of touched on, is they like players who really want to play for Liverpool, who want to come to Liverpool. They're willing to sort of accept slightly lower wages than they'll probably get elsewhere, and come and develop under Jurgen Klopp, because that's as guarantee as you can get. There's not many managers like him in terms of developing players from the base to becoming world class players. So, I think Dortmund will want that to happen. They'll want that bidding war to happen. But I think if that is the case and it does come down to money, then Liverpool will probably go onto their list of alternatives.
Yeah, before we go then, I want to touch on Liverpool's rivals and maybe the lack of business they're doing or how well they're prepared. We've spoken a lot today about how well both on the pitch and in the transfer market Liverpool have prepared for this season and what lays ahead. But Theo, today, of course, Manchester City announcing the signing of Kalvin Phillips from Leeds United. And I just wonder kind of your take on Man City, obviously from the outside of where they're at and just how strong you expect them to be this coming season, because I have to say, whilst it's not our job to be on top of what City do day in, day out, to me, there's a lot of players. Bernardo Silva, one of them, Gabriel Jesus today has left and joined Arsenal. Ilkay Gundogan, who's been a key player for them as well. There's a number of Manchester City players, including Raheem Sterling, who are constantly getting linked with an exit. Still hasn't happened, that you would expect they would have to replace before the coming season does commence.
Yeah, but this happens every year with City. They've always got their players, these like not even fringe players, because Bernardo Silva's not a fringe player, and he's actually in the starting 11. But like the Sterlings of this world, who don't start every week, who are linked with exits, and then moves don't happen for whatever reason, and they go on to have a really good season for Man City. They managed to keep the squad happy, partly because they're paying the big wages, but also because they're in the contention for the biggest trophies. Like City, whatever they did this summer, you'd expect them to finish in the top two in the Premier League, expect them to get to Champions League quarterfinals, semi-finals at the absolute minimum. They're going to be up there no matter what. And the business, it does look intimidating. It does look very strong. They want was it Kurasela from Brighton as well at left back? That would be a good signing if they got him. But at the same time, their way of doing things is almost similar to Liverpool, that it is just replacing holes already in the squad. They're not adding to what they already had. You can say they don't have a striker last year, they win the league, and now they've signed Haaland. But then Haaland is just replacing bodies. Like they saw Ferran Torres leave, they saw Aguero leave, they've got Jesus who's just left, if Sterling leaves. So that's an attacking player who's taking that void. Alvarez, they signed in January to come in this summer. That fills that void. Phillips replaces Fernandinho. Kurasela replaces Zinchenko or Mendy. It's one where they are just filling these voids in the squad and make the squad stronger. It's how Liverpool are doing it as well. The difference is Liverpool aren't going to spend 50 million on a player to sit on the bench, as you'd expect Kalvin Phillips to do. They'll spend 50 million on a player to go into that starting 11, and then they'll look for a smarter signing, like whether it's a youngster like Carvalho or someone with a bit of versatility who can work his way up and fill the squad there. And this is why they both do really smart business. It's maybe just a little bit easier for City, but yeah, it's intimidating. But then it's intimidating when you look around the rest of the teams in this division, when you see some of the business they're doing, if they get it right. But then we say this every year. Like this time last year, we were saying, United, they've got Sancho, they've got Varane, they got Ronaldo in the end. This is going to be 4 teams going for the title. And in the end, United were nowhere near it. Chelsea fell away for obvious reasons, despite spending nearly 100 million on Lukaku. The only 2 guarantees were Liverpool and City up there again. You'd imagine it's going to be those 2, and then it's Chelsea or Tottenham. Another team have done really good business. They have to really do enough to get that next step to be able to rival Liverpool, to be able to rival City. So you look and say, these are big names, these are talented players, but this Liverpool squad nearly won a quadruple, and it's arguably stronger. Mane, losing him was a big loss, but they've got the average age down. They've refreshed the attack. There's a plan there for the midfield. They're moving in the direction. And these other teams, they should be looking at Liverpool and going, well, that's intimidating as well. They're going to be a threat. It's set up to be another interesting title race. But if anything, last year's a lesson for any of us. It's Liverpool and City are just going to be the 2 going right until the end as the others fall away.
Yeah, Cucurella, by the way, is Mark Cucurella, the Brighton fullback. He's nailed the French pronunciation, but Theo needs a Spanish class.
At least I had a go.
You did, and that's we can applaud you on that. We did know who you were on about. I did when you first said Cucurella. I think not quite sure who he is, but yeah, no, we got there in the end. But Gorsty, what Theo ended on there of saying it's City and Liverpool. Suppose you can't see any other way this coming season. Can you, Chelsea? There seems to be so much uncertainty around them. Tottenham have done some smart business early, as much as that pains me to say, and do have a league-winning manager in charge of them. And Manchester United, well, let's just leave that there.
Christian Eriksen's gone.
I think the interesting thing is the small margins that have decided the Premier League title over the last few years. I think Liverpool, since August 2018, Liverpool have picked up 357 points, I think it is, and City have picked up 358. So when City are looking to lose the likes of Sterling and Gabriel Jesus, potentially Bernardo Silva, Fernandinho admittedly didn't play too much, but he was still a big figure in that squad, wasn't he? You just wonder how the kind of turnover of squad and the fact that they're going to have to play completely differently with Haaland at the top end of the pitch, how that's going to manifest itself in the points tally. Liverpool obviously going through a little bit of a transition themselves in terms of Núñez coming in and Mane leaving, but other than that one change, you know, it's as you were, isn't it, for the squad? Everyone knows next season that Mohamed Salah's going to be amongst the goals again. Thiago, Van Dijk, you know, Andy Robertson, Trent at fullback, Fabinho's going to be in midfield, Alisson Becker's going to be in goal. You know what you're getting with Liverpool this season more than perhaps City, with a bit of a tactical tweak and one or two key players leaving. So I just wonder, when the margins are that small, could that be something that Liverpool are able to exploit at some stage? I'm not sure, but it's one of them, innit, where it's going to be another fascinating battle for the Premier League title, but absolutely no way that anyone else is getting there, City and Liverpool this season. They might, someone like Tottenham might bloody the nose like they did last season, but I don't see anyone else able to put together a run that's going to see them break the 90-point barrier the way these two have, as a matter of routine, really, over the last 4 years.
Yeah, definitely. Dave, I saw you nodding your head there, agreeing with Gorst. I have to say, it'd be very early and foolish to read too much into what's happening with City's squad at the moment. But even when you see a player like Zach Steffen, I get backup goalkeeper, but important within the squad dynamic, Nathan Ake as well, linked with the exit door, as well as Alexander Zinchenko, who seems to be touted around to every Premier League club that's going right now. You do wonder what the dynamic within that City team unit is now. It's not to say that there haven't been Liverpool players who've been linked with moves away, but it does feel, by and large, other than the players that you know won't be part of the squad, there probably isn't going to be much movement. But there seems to be a cloud, perhaps, gathering over the Etihad in that regard.
Yeah, continuity is absolutely massive in terms of the consistency that both these teams have shown over the last few years. And I think it is, you know, Ghost is absolutely right, I think, to point out the fact that there is quite a lot of potential turnover at City this summer. You know, you look at, you know, if they lose Raheem Sterling, if Bernardo Silva goes, I think from a Liverpool's perspective, that's a huge boost, because you then, you know, you're asking players who are coming in to hit the ground running straight away, to say, okay, you've got to be part of a 90+ points winning attack straight from the off, and that's a huge ask. You know, we saw last season, if Jack Grealish, for example, is getting asked to step up this season and be a real major part of City's attack, he wasn't that last season. So that's what, you know, you're asking a player to do something that's new to him. He's got to provide a lot more goals and assists next season if City are going to maintain the level. And then if you lose that experience, and there's so many players you've named there who could be moving on, even some of the backups that could be moving on, that, you know, could be really sorely missed. You know, big contributions he'd made off the bench in the past, or just being around the squad and knowing exactly what it takes to win. So, you know, the fact that there are some unknowns about City, I think, and Liverpool's major unknown is probably Núñez. You know, they could start the first 10 games of the Premier League season, Liverpool, and Núñez could only come on as a sub in those, and you'd still be confident that they've got enough in the squad and the team to collect an awful lot of points, or the points that they would probably need to be up there as challengers straight from the off. Whereas, could you say that as City, if Haaland maybe, you know, picks up a little injury, which he's prone to doing, or maybe doesn't just quite hit the ground running, same with Julian Alvarez, you know, then there's question marks around the attack, and they could be, you know, it's looking like they could lose some really experienced bodies in that area in particular. So, you know, that could present a weakness for City, and as we've said earlier in the podcast, if there's any weakness early on, Liverpool will jump all over that, and they'll run away with the title. So or they have the potential to do so anyway. So, you know, that's something from a Liverpool's perspective. Maybe be monitoring over these next couple of weeks and the remainder of the transfer window to see if City do lose those experienced bodies, because I think that could be considered a real boost.
The final point I just want to make mention of before we do go, and I'm sure through the 90s fanzines and whatnot covering Manchester United were probably full of quips towards Liverpool, and therefore it feels only right, Theo, to touch on the Cristiano Ronaldo situation at Old Trafford and how much was made of the fact that Cristiano Ronaldo was going back to Old Trafford last summer, and yet over the weekend read that perhaps not a transfer request, probably wouldn't want to do that to Manchester United, but that he is wanting to get off, and it just shows just a disparity between where Liverpool are now. You can't imagine a player coming out and saying they really don't want to be part of Liverpool. Yes, Sadio Mane's moved on this summer, but that was something that was easily then rectified with Darwin Núñez coming in.
Yeah, something that I think we all saw coming from the outside, that you spend that much on wages for a 37-year-old, as legendary as he is, as good a player as he still is, to be a talisman when he doesn't really fit into what you're trying to do at the club. It's not going to end well. And Jurgen Klopp said it best when he said, well, it's not a signing for the future, it's for the here and now. And it could have been a great success, got United into the top four. They would still be in a dilemma when Ronaldo departs after 2-3 years and they have to find a replacement for those goals. Instead, it all fell apart for them. I think everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong for them last year, and he's understandably had enough, according to the reports, and wants out. But while it's a signing that Liverpool would never do, it could be a blessing for United, because it seemed like they started to have a plan last year when they got Sancho. They had these young attacking players like Rashford, Martial was still there. They wanted to go in that move, and we can get Ronaldo. City are in talks with Ronaldo. We've got to sign him, so City don't get them. It's like Gary Neville comes out over the weekend and say Liverpool have been played by Mohamed Salah. Well, weren't United played by City, Ronaldo's representatives? Now they seem to be being played by them again. If he's going to push for a move to Chelsea or wherever, it could just be putting the pressure on so they act in the transfer market. But it was always going to end in tears. It wasn't the right signing for a club that's trying to push in, get back into the top four and have that right impact. Like, signed these aging stars in the past, and some of them have done pretty well. I think of Ibrahimovic, but it's not long-term thinking. It's not a strategy that's going to get you continued success. It just seems a bit of a desperate gamble, hoping that he can score the goals to make a difference in one season, and then you can build off that. He scored, 18 goals in the Premier League last year, and they were still nowhere near. And then you leave question marks about the mentality of the squad as well. Like, you sign Ronaldo and you think, he's going to have a really good impact on this squad. Players are going to learn from him, going to love his winning mentality and just raise an extra their levels from that. But now you've seen the reports going, their squad's not actually that bothered that he's going. They find him too intimidating. He puts too much pressure on them. It's like, well, what's that say about the rest of you, that you can't reach this winning mentality? It's just a mess for them. Like, if Ronaldo goes, where do they go? Like, they didn't expect him to go. They missed out on Darwin Núñez. Unlike Liverpool, they're not going to have this short list of strikers. We missed out on primary target A, we'll just go to B, who'll do just as good as his job. This could be another year of turmoil for them. I think today they've just agreed verbally to sign Christian Eriksen. Would be a good signing. That's a 3-year deal. So you want these younger players where they get Frankie de Jong. They're just a mess at the moment. It has been for a number of years. Ten Hag really needs to get it right on the pitch. Ronaldo, by leaving, could be a blessing in disguise for them, but there's still a lot of work for them to do to be able to say they're rivaling a Liverpool and a Man City in the title race.
Yeah, Gorsty, I suppose it just validates everything, the way in which Liverpool operate and the way they go, that there is no room for sentiment. I suppose we were, speaking last summer, saying Luis Suarez might well be on the market. Is it worth Liverpool bringing him back? But no, any temptation over that kind of deal is not taken on by Liverpool, because it is about now and the future, not about what's gone in the past.
Yeah, so it was basically the deal to sign Ronaldo was because he was going to City, wasn't it? And Alex Ferguson basically decided that he couldn't have that. You know, the Liverpool equivalent would be Suarez on his way to Everton. So Carragher and Kenneth Dalglish get involved and get on the blower to Klopp and say, look, you've got to bring back Suarez, and he does. It's just the indicative of the kind of lack of joined up thinking that there's spread throughout the club pretty much since Ferguson left. You know, under Ed Woodward, he was kind of starry-eyed, wasn't he? He wanted the big signings, he wanted the social media numbers, and that's why, they've signed the likes of Pogba and Jadon Sancho and Rafael Varane and obviously Ronaldo more than anyone else. They've just gone after superstars year after year, big names, and none of them have really delivered. I mean, you can say Ronaldo probably did, but he was, it's a weird one because he's obviously scored 24 goals for them last season, I think. But you know, to the neutrals watching on, he was a big factor of why they were in such a dire position that they ended up in, the lowest of the Premier League era. You know, comparing them to Liverpool at the moment, it's still the two biggest clubs in England, and they probably always will be, to be fair. But in terms of how they run, they are night and day, so far apart. It's untrue, and they're pressing the reset button again, aren't they, with Erik ten Hag this summer? And I think that'll be Klopp's 5th manager that he's met, you know, once he plays Manchester United. So, yeah, it's, you know, let's be thankful from a Liverpool perspective that it's United who are in the kind of situation they're in, and Liverpool are in the one they found themselves in.
Yeah, I really don't like talking about Manchester United, Dave, but I've let the other two. Do you want to have a laugh?
Yeah, I just think I think they've covered every point really in terms of just how much of a shambles Manchester United are. But I would say, you know, there is an element as well that makes this even more sort of funny from a Liverpool fan perspective, is that as much as this probably is, as Theo said, a blessing in disguise because he completely unbalances the team, there's also some short-term pain coming in because, you know, he did score a lot of goals last season. I covered a couple of quite a few Manchester United games last season, and I saw him score two hat-tricks and 3-2 wins. You know, wins that wouldn't have happened without him. You could argue that maybe the team would have been less shambolic without a man up front who doesn't want to run. But, you know, there were real problems with that football team. And I think there's short-term pain coming in terms of losing him. Now, that short-term pain should have been a season ago, not signing him and starting a revolution towards, you know, an acceptable manager who's got an actual plan. And you know, they're nowhere further down the line with that. And the idea now that he's thrown this idea in that he wants to leave this late in the day, possibly because United haven't made signings that are satisfactory to him, just shows that the idea that he loves the club is also a nonsense, really. I don't think Cristiano Ronaldo loves anyone but himself, if I'm being honest. I think Manchester United fans should possibly accept that. He doesn't hide the idea that he's got an ego, and my God, he's one of the greatest footballers of all time, so that's fair enough. But, you know, this idea that it was a homecoming and that he really loves Manchester United has sort of been undermined really by what's about to play out. And I think, you know, it might be a positive in the long term for United, but in the short term it's a negative, and it says a lot about Cristiano Ronaldo as well. So yeah, it's not good news any way you spin it, really.
Yeah, well, at least that Man United that he helped build played their part in Liverpool beating them 9-0 over 2 games last season. So let's finish it there and wrap up. This season is well and truly underway then, and this the first pod of the new season. From myself, Guy Clarke, Paul Gorst, Theo, Squires and David Lynch. It's bye for now.